Okay, are you ready? So, I think in the past we had, one year you had women's symposium at the end. Have we ever done this one before? So, the idea of the exec board had was maybe have a little panel on the last day from the award winners to maybe get different insight than you would get when they win their awards, and have a canned speech about how great their son is, or how great Tosa is, or how great your son is and your kid you brought. So maybe we just have like an open forum and ask them questions about stuff like that. So what I'd like you to do first is introduce yourself and how you got into coaching. We heard some of it yesterday, how you were an athlete or what you did, but never really heard the answer of how you actually started coaching.
Tim Foulks, originally born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, went to Wauwatosa West High School. High school All-American, Dover, Tennessee, came back, went to my alma mater and started coaching there. Bob White, Sr. was my mentor, my role model. He was a 50-50 guy. You go 50%, I go 50%, otherwise it's the highway. It was old school, but it worked. Going forward, before I stopped coaching in 81 and had a family, I coached at Thomas More, Marquette, Homestead, UWM. I opened up the Schrader Center in 78. We cut the ribbon in 79 at Schrader. And fast forward, came back to Neenah in 1996.
So like,
The rest is history.
so more of, did you just wake up one day and say, I want to coach? Like for me, I graduated from college. I didn't have a job, like a real job yet. I wasn't going to be a teacher. And luckily my first job was coaching. I said, well, how hard can this be? Right? So like, what was the moment? Right? Exactly. Right. But like, what was the day that you said, I graduate from Tennessee, I want to be a coach?
I don't know. Bob White, I liked the way he coached. I coached similar to that until Tom Hargraves told me to quit yelling at my divers. And I just liked doing it. I mean, I liked helping out kids.
Sure.
And I dove with the kids until I couldn't. I mean, it just felt like the right thing to do.
Okay. Next.
So, John Pearson, graduated from Rochester High School. I was actually, from a diving perspective, I was just a summer club diver. I played football, wrestled, and ran track in high school. Ran track D1 at Western Michigan University. But I was way too young when I went into college. I was 17 in college, did not understand the business part of college. Way too much ego for a young kid. Was injured as a junior in high school, so I only had my spring senior year to get attention from college athletes. And I was able to walk on at Western, earn my spot on the team. Tough coach, great coach, but the discussion we had was walk on, make the team, and we'll talk about money as your sophomore year. So after I made the team that year, I walked into the coach's office, said, you know, I wasn't looking for much, right? It was an ego thing, and I had to learn to check that. Took me about 40 years. But we went in and we talked, and he said, John, here's the deal. He said, that money we're talking about, you're running hurdles for me, and you're running the 400 for me, but I need this 100-meter kid out of Chicago. His parents can't afford to send him back. Yours can. I said, you know what, Coach Shaw, I get it. I walked out, got a copy of my transcripts, and transferred because my hometown college, Oakland University, was talking about starting a track team. Yeah, they did cross country. And I'm like, okay, not doing that. So I ended up training at OU. Did not, again, way too young, I had a great relationship with the diving coach, practiced every day, but didn't show the proper respect to Coach Hovland, who wasn't a huge diving fan anyway at OU. And never made the travel team, never got to travel, but I trained. So I ended up, the coaching part though, so between freshman and junior year, I was coaching, I was lifeguarding and coaching diving at a country club, and the local high school, my alma mater, had a head swim coach who had an issue. He needed an assistant coach. He asked me to coach diving. I said, I'm not ready. He said, we'll figure it out. You're going to be my assistant swim coach. You're going to be my diving coach. You're going to be there first thing in the morning to take care of the kids when I leave from Rochester to go to East Detroit to teach. And then you're going to be there to get them warm, stretched out and warmed up while I drive from East Detroit back to Rochester. So I was his assistant swim coach and dive coach. And that's how I started. And what I found was helping these kids, especially kids in my local community, grow and get better. That's where my passion struck. And one of the things that I decided early on was I wasn't prepared for that next step, that college step. And I've spent the last 40 years making sure that any of my kids that had an opportunity and talent to move on to the next level would be emotionally and mentally prepared to take that next step and learn how to deal with the business end of the athletics and the transactional relationship between the college athlete and the college program. So that's kind of how I got into it.
So my senior year in high school, I was trying to figure out what my career path was going to be. Went to Michigan State, and I had thought about journalism, I had thought about law, thought about maybe being a crime reporter for a newspaper. That sounded fun. And then I went and I said, I really like science. And they're like, oh, you should be a science teacher. And I was like, well, I could do that because it also means I get to coach, because I had a high school coach who was phenomenal and kind of built me into the person that I am today. And I wanted to be able to give that back to other athletes. So I went and I got a biology major and a chemistry minor and my degree in secondary education. And with the plan that I was going to coach high school. And I did teach for 4 years in Indianapolis when I was teaching and coaching there. It was real easy to get a job as a female in science and a swim coach because the guy that I interviewed with was like, oh, you're a swim coach? Oh, great, you're hired. That was, he was desperately looking for one. That's how I got into coaching. It was really just, I wanted to give back what I had gotten out of my 4 years in high school and year and a half of college.
Well, I grew up in Grangeville, Idaho, population 3,636 people, still to this day. It was a summer league program. The coach that I had that got me in was a friend of mine's older brother who was coaching. He was like in college his freshman year, and that was his summer job, was to take care of the team. And I was luckily pretty successful as I started swimming. And then I went to the University of Idaho, and I kind of backtracked. My parents were both teachers, so the culture around our house was to teach. And I was a music major in college. And after my first year of being a music major, I realized I did not have the perseverance to practice as much as I needed to be practicing. And so I jumped into the pool in the spring of that first year and tried to make the college team. And I actually did, and after that, I loved it so much. I swam 4 years at University of Idaho. I wouldn't say I was a great swimmer, but I was a pretty good swimmer. Ended up getting a scholarship, and I just like the fact that I liked teaching and I liked giving back to the kids I got to coach as I was in college, and it just was a natural progression from here to now.
I think it's interesting to note that you didn't have the patience and the tenacity to do music and practice every day, but then you picked a sport where you have to go to practice every single day.
My name's John Barnes. I grew up in Hinsdale, little suburb of Chicago area. Was a pretty decent high school swimmer. Went through all that wonderful stuff. Went on some recruiting trips one I'll never forget was University of Kentucky when Paul was the coach down there, and Dallas was on that night during my recruiting trip. It was the best drinking game I've ever been part of. They had a drinking game set up to the show of Dallas. And that's when I realized I don't need to go to a big school. I ended up going to a school in Springfield, Missouri called Drury. Now a decent D2 program. Got in there, I'm like, okay, talking to the upperclassmen, what's the nice way? I was not a motivated kid. What's the easiest major? And they're like, go criminal justice. So I dabbled in criminal justice and psychology. Then I started coaching with the club team in Springfield. Graduation came, I'm like, do I really want a job? I'm gonna be honest, no. Well, hold on, I can coach. Criminology, psychology, I'm dealing with, not to be, this is a bad joke, but I'm dealing with mental midgets and criminals, so I mean, what the hell? I mean, I can work a couple hours at night, do a few workouts here and there. Got into that. Then I got to St. Thomas Academy in 1998, I think it was. Got hired there, got my MBA, which doesn't mean anything besides I own my own club. So I like money, so I like to find a way to make sure that is there for my retirement. I joke about it. Bottom line is I'm 63 and I'm still waiting to turn mentally the age of 17. I get to deal with kids, have a blast. And to me, coaching is not the X's and O's and all the workout design and all that other, sorry, the way I talk, the crap. It is the relationships and the time you get to spend with the kids. And that's, you were joking about Jeremy, but he and I are like incredibly good friends. And that's when these guys come back for alumni meets. Our alumni meet lasts about 5 minutes. And then we go to a local establishment for about 5 hours. But
Right.
It's a blast, and that's what I love about the coaching side is the relationships that you get to grow with all the athletes. I don't call them swimmers, they're athletes.
Sure, so leave the mic there. We'll come back this way. So I'll do one more, and then we'll open it up. So what would be your advice to a new coach or a younger coach or a first-time coach? Maybe just one or two things that, I mean, you talked on relationships. I mean, that was a good answer, right?
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
But what would be
I
something?
thought you told me these were going to be lollipops.
This is lollipop stuff, right? What would be the one thing that you tell a younger coach or a newer coach? Maybe you're bringing on an assistant coach and you want them to take over for you, something like that. What would you tell them?
In all honesty, right now, and I've talked to my assistant who's been with me almost 30 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I was 22, there's no way in God's green earth I would go into coaching. Now with all the stuff that U.S. swimming, like especially club swimming, all the hoops you have to jump through makes it a nightmare. But now if I was talking, which I do, talk to the young guys, again, it's not about all the time you spend planning your workouts, or coaching football. I watch these guys spend hours watching film. I coach my outside linebackers. I go, football's real simple, boys. Find the guy that's carrying the brown leather thing and hit him really hard. And coaching to me is that simple. It's getting kids to believe in you and let them know that you love them and they can trust you and there's a care factor. When you get kids buying into your love and they loving each other, that's when great things happen. And if you can teach a young coach that it's not about all the science, that's all important, don't get me wrong, but it's about the relationship piece that you can, our first day of practice, we used to have this little 5-lane pool with 60 kids. You have some kids going 21 high on the first day and some kids going 118 in the 50 free. Yeah. It's a blast, and I'd also talk to young coaches if they want to get kids out, coach other sports. There was one year I had my whole starting D line, 6'4", 300-pound guys swimming for cross training. I got a lot of my lacrosse guys cross training. My one son yesterday, and he forgot it because he's a guy, and he's like, ADD kicks in and we forget things. I had a good point. But his claim to fame is he won his heat of the JV conference meet. And that's just, I would tell young coaches to make sure to get to know your athletes, not as swimmers or divers or football players or lacrosse players, as a person, and find out what they're about and help them guide them to become a great adult. It's not about the athletic side. It's about helping these kids become better people. That was long. Wait, sorry, guys.
I would agree with what he was saying about the getting to know your athletes and trying to make them better people. But I think if you're going to have longevity in this sport as a coach, I said it in my talk, is that I think you have to have a life outside of swimming. I think you have to have interests that that get you away from the deck. I see too many, right now, I see too many young coaches making the commitment because they're excited about coaching and they're forgetting about their personal life, you know, going on dates, you know, and, you know, taking time off of that and just, you know, getting married. And they're just so involved with trying to make that next mark. And then they get about 12, 13 years in and they suddenly realize they missed something and then they're out. And I think we're missing some of those key components with that, where, you know, most of you have your family and things like that. And everybody up here has their family. And, you know, that's what kept you in the sport because, as I told my friend, I'm kind of in for the money too sometimes. You know, and, but I think that's really important that we keep our perspective that it's still a job. We can love our job, but we have to support our family, have to support ourselves emotionally and physically and things like that.
I told Eve last night, next year in Grand Rapids, do a 9-hole golf thing. Get all the coaches out there outside of swimming so you can just BS on the course.
We can do that.
We're definitely doing that. They're already planning it. They're very excited about it. So yes, and know who you are and be yourself. It's great to come to these conferences and hear all these ideas about, like, this is how my culture works and this is how I built my team. And all of the advice is great, but it only works if it works for you and who you are as a coach. So I made the mistake years ago. I went and listened to Chris Van Sluten at an NISCA conference, and he was talking about this inner city program, and he had this whole thing, and there was like a demerit system, and you kept track of, you give them points, you take the points away, and that's how you get your varsity letter, and you track it through the season. And I was like, yes, this is what we're gonna do. So I took it back and I set it up, and about a week in, I realized I don't care about points. Like, really, this is not me. So we just scrapped it and I went back to what I had been doing. And so then the next time when I was having leadership issues, I had learned my lesson and I came to a NISCA conference and I asked literally every coach in the conference, I was like, what do you do for leaders? How do you pick your captains? How do you train your leaders? What are you teaching them? What do your captains do for you? And there were probably, 60 people at the conference, and I got 60 different answers. And I took all those answers and I went, yeah, we're not doing a 4-page essay application because I'm not reading those. But I will do an interview, and we're not going to do this, but I might do that. And so I built my own leadership, how we pick our captains, what they have to do for me, and then the leadership training that we go through. So it's a lot better if you know who you are before you get started with that sort of thing, because I am not the type of coach that yells at my kids. So anything that involves yelling is probably not going to work great for me, and they would probably just laugh at me anyway. And if you're super sarcastic, that's okay. Be you. Don't hide those things, because the kids want you to be authentic. They want you to be who you are as a person, so that they can trust you as a person, and then they will trust you as a coach.
And I agree with all that. And one of the things that John said, it's to let those young coaches know from an athlete standpoint, if you truly care for your athletes, they will run through a wall. They'll swim through a wall for you. I can get kids to do things on boards that some people think are just nuts, but that's because I love my kids and they know it. But I want to get back to one of your original promises as a young coach. One of the most intimidating things for me was when I have my kids and we show up at a regional and at a state meet, and we're here and we're in this little huddle because we don't know anybody. And when I started feeling welcome was when I got involved with Macomb County Association, and then we had a group of us there, and then we became involved with the state association. When your friends are on that deck, when your competitors, when we're on a deck together, I'm not going to walk up and say hi, and people are coming up to me and saying hello. It's getting that connection for that young coach. Mm-hmm. So it's not just about them, they're part of something bigger. My advice to my young coaches is get involved. We have a mentorship program with NISCA, mm-hmm. and I'm on that, and I've been on both ends of that when it was more informal than it is now, because we've got a more formal setup now. But that's what I would tell my younger coaches. Get involved, find somebody that you respect, and ask questions. And don't be afraid to ask them questions. Somebody came up to me on the pool deck and said, "I have a really dumb question." No, you don't. You're asking it. So don't be, to my advice to coaches, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to look silly, because you really don't. If you ask some of the people who've been around for a while, they'll welcome you. Mm-hmm. And that's what you need. And in addition to, I'm blessed to have a family that supports what I do, because having a life outside of the pool is huge. I've coached other sports as well, and it helps. Okay, you want to get a diver, find somebody nuts enough to pole vault. Then you make them a diver, and guess what? They become a better pole vaulter. So all those things apply. But make a connection with the other coaches on the deck. Learn. Be humble enough to learn from the other people, and you'll feel much more welcome. It's a big family. Rooms like this become a big family, and that's what we need, that connection we need for young coaches so they continue to grow and stick around.
What they said. Only kidding.
Wait, hang on. So at our all-state banquet in Wisconsin, I think Mike introduced him one time Tim wins an award, and everybody else gives up these long, elaborate speeches. Tim walks up and says, "Thanks," and then he just walked right off the stage.
Not much for the long speech. But the only thing I would add is patience. New coaches have to be patient. Your role model or your mentor got there over time. They didn't get there overnight. So you got to make sure that they know they're going to get where they got to go, but it's going to take them a little bit of time. And patience is a virtue. That's it.
Okay. I probably have more questions, but anybody have a generic question that all five could maybe answer? If you got one that you just want the diving coaches to answer, or you just want the swimming? Oh, yes, Mike.
I just want you to share one story of your most difficult swimmer, diver, and how you handled it.
Should we set a time limit on this? Because this has to end at sometime after 10. I don't know if
That's a tough one. They're all difficult a little bit. I mean, diving is a risk sport. Your diver has to have complete confidence in you, otherwise it's not happening. I think coaching my son was the toughest thing on 3 meter. Well, I would rather coach anybody down the block than coaching him on 3 meter. But again, Tom Hargraves yelled at me because I'm yelling at them. And I learned that, you have to got 10 kids, you got to be 10 different diving coaches. You got to split yourself up and coach each individual, try to find out where their comfortable spot is. And then they end up learning faster. I don't know. That's a tough one. I can't think of I probably will think of it in a little while.
I think, as we give it to John here, I think one of the funny things is, as Tim's talking, the other 4 of them are all just like nodding their heads. Like, we got 10 divers, 10 different coaching styles for all 10 kids, and they all start nodding their heads.
Because you're right. You have to find out how that kid learns. One of the most challenging things I've ever dealt with was obviously coaching my own son. I actually offered him the opportunity as he was going to high school, because I coached 2 high schools in the club. I said, if you want, I said, I'll step away from Oxford. I said, I'll get you a coach. I said, you know, we will get you a really good coach, or you can dive for me. It's completely your choice. And his response to me was, you've been coaching for almost 40 years. It's my turn. And understand, I was his little league coach. I was at all the soccer games and all that other stuff. So, I mean, I was there, but he basically decided, he told me it was my turn to coach him. So that was a tough one. But the toughest diver, I do remember, the toughest diver, some other people, I was not coaching middle school at the time. This is at Romeo High School, where I was for 30 years. And this little girl came in, and as a 7th and 8th grader, she was also a very good backstroker, but she decided to dive as a middle schooler in addition to swim. And everybody told her how wonderful she was. She was incredible. What a great athlete, what a great diver. You're going to win everything. And she came to me as a freshman, and she was being taught by people who had no idea what they were doing in terms of coaching diving. Everything was backwards. Everything was backwards. We talked at the pool about how to generate rotation and jump up and down and not pull and lean. Everything was down and out and awful. She was good enough, and I ended up pulling her and her mother aside her freshman year of high school and said, here's the deal. You're good enough that you're going to be a good diver without me. You're going to take down our school records. You're going to go to state. You're going to do fine. So if you want to continue this path that you're on right now, I will be here. I will make sure if you do anything really stupid or dangerous, I'll correct you. But if you're not going to listen, I can't fight with you every day. So that she finally decided, I said, you're going to be good without me. You could be exceptional with me. It's completely your choice. And I had her mother in the conversation. I had the athletic director in the conversation, and I had my swim coach in the conversation. And she said, okay, coach, I really want to be good. I'll do what you say. I said, well, here's the deal. You argue with me, you're out. I said, we're not going to fight on a pool deck. If I tell you this is how we need to do this and you say no, hit the locker room. As long as you're okay with that, mom's okay with it, everybody's okay with that. Her freshman year, she was kicked out of practice more than half the time. Her sophomore year, she was kicked out of practice more than half the time. And she never did make a state. She made it to the state meet freshman, sophomore year, did not make the finals. Her junior year, she actually made practice 80% of the time. And she was top 20, but didn't make the state final. Her senior year, she finally came around and she said, Coach, we're going to do this. Never got kicked out of practice. One day her senior year, I looked at her and said, Liz, you're having a rough day. You're not being kicked out of practice, but I want you to go home. Just go home, relax, take care of whatever stress you're dealing with. She came back the next day. She was perfect. She was 3rd in the state that year. She was All-American that year. She got herself a scholarship to Wayne State University, was a 7-time All-American and national champion on 1 and 3, I don't know, back in like 2010. And for at least a while had the NCAA D2 record on 3-meter. Because it took 3 years to get through to her that she had to stop doing everything her way and start doing things the right way. And eventually it worked and she clicked. But that was the toughest one I ever had, because seriously, 2 seasons in a row, half the practices, you're gone. I ended up having patience. I didn't know I had patience because I kept throwing her out of practice. But it took a while, but that was the toughest one I ever had. And that's the one that taught me to just try to slowly eat away at some of those walls you're dealing with. And sometimes really good things can happen.
I don't know if he was the toughest one I ever had, but the one that popped into my mind was my second year of coaching. I was in Indiana, and I had a kid. He had skipped a ton of practice the year before, and the second year I was like, we're not doing this. And it was always like there was an excuse. Oh, my mom needs me home to vacuum the house today, right? There was always an excuse. And so I started out the season. We have an attendance policy. You have to be at practice. And one day stops by my classroom and says, hey, I have an after school detention. I'm not going to make it to practice today. And I was like, well, okay, that's not great. I'm not thrilled about that. Well, then I go to the pool and one of my other boys comes up and says, hey, did you see Josh? He was walking home with his friends. And I was like, oh, come on. You're lying to me again? So instead of confronting him about it, I waited until he came to the pool the next day and he comes in, hey, coach, how's it going? And I just looked at him and I turned my back on him. He's like, oh, I'm really sorry. I missed practice yesterday. And I said, walk with me. Because I didn't really want to take him into the office. So we walked away from the team who was warming up, stretching. We walked around the edge of the pool and I said, listen, I know you cut practice yesterday to go hang out with your friends. And that hurts my heart because I thought you liked me. I thought you liked hanging out at the pool deck. I thought you liked being on the team. We only get 2 hours a day and only for 3 months. Like, you can hang out with your friends anytime, but you only get to hang out with me, for a couple hours. And am I doing something wrong that you don't want to be here at practice every day? He's like, no, coach, no, I love being on the team and I like being in practice. Like, all right, well, listen, you can't skip any more practice because if you do, I have to put you off the team. And he was like, no, I promise I'll be here every day. He was there every day. And so I'm not above emotional manipulation when it's going to work. But I have found that works if it's kind of one-on-one with the kid and not in front of everybody. But you give them it really hurts my heart that these things are happening. And they're like, oh, coach, we're so sorry. So yeah, that was the one that popped into my head. I don't think I've had a ton of super challenging kids. I had one did not like swimming for a female coach. That was part of his culture, was women did not tell him what to do. He only made it through 3/4 of the season before he just gave up because I tell people what to do, and if you don't do it, you get in trouble. But yeah, he just kind of made his choices and left, so it was fine.
Well, I think all the time, I think every year I had a challenging swimmer in my book. I have one right now that he's actually moved off my group, but now he's my best buddy. He comes and talks to me. He goes, I really want to swim with you again in your group. And because the other coach is so frustrated with him, and I have to be very careful with how I say things to the other coach about how to handle this swimmer. The swimmer is always, he's late, he moves slow into the water. He's well-meaning, he's got a really nice heart. He'll take a 10-year-old at a swim meet and mentor him. But he'll miss his event just because he's playing in the warm-up pool with them. And you have to look at him and say, hey, you got to come back to reality. And we have these come to Jesus meetings quite a lot. But I would say to you, with tough swimmers, I said it the other day, I'm really stubborn. And I tell all my kids that if I stop talking to you, I've given up. And I've never really stopped talking. And now I've kicked people off the team, but it's because they needed to be kicked off the team. They did something that was dangerous and harmful for other kids, and that's not tolerated. But if it's just or immature, that can drive you crazy, but there is a way to handle it. So
All sprinters, all freshmen. In honesty, freshmen who come from club teams, that their whole life is about what the clock says. And I had first day in the parents' meeting before the season starts.
Thanks a lot.
I don't care how fast your kid goes, as long as if he wins his heat, he gives our team 6 points. He adds 30 seconds and wins his heat, I'm happy. And these club parents are exploding. So it's teaching these freshmen how to race, that it's not about always what the clock says. Probably the best kid on my team this year, he's a junior, he's a 12-week wonder. He's a sprinter, one hell of a free safety. But getting him with swimming is always a challenge. I don't know how he does it in 12 weeks. I mean, he was 54 high 100 breast and 20.50 free, and he swims maybe 12 weeks a year. Talented kid, kills himself in the weight room. But working with him is always a challenge. But I'm going to totally go off course because I tend to do that. Biggest challenge I ever had, 2001. Young man was a sophomore. His freshman, he was 21.4 in the 50. And I've always told this kid, you're in trouble, call me. You get a call about cell phone goes off. Yes, I had a cell phone on 01, but cell phone went off probably about 1:30 a.m. I wasn't his first call. That was to his parents to bail him out. The second call was to a lawyer. He got busted with a trunk full of weed. So we had to go through a process. I mean, our school has board of disciplines. We didn't kick him off the team. We kept him on the team. He wasn't allowed to compete for sophomore year, junior year. But just working with that young man to get him back, I would never say he's on the straight and narrow. He's a super successful dad now. He came back and was able to swim his senior year. He stayed in school. And just watching him develop over that 18-month period where he was going through hell and helping him through his addiction and everything that he was going through. That was a challenge, but it was so rewarding to see what happened with him. So, I mean, we all have the challenges, but 9 times out of 10, it's the end result that makes it all worthwhile.
Right. So that's another hand up. Yes?
So Coach Barnes, I heard the swimmer that introduced you mention 100, 100s. So I have taken so much crap because we always did 100, 100s. Most of the time we did it on New Year's Eve. When I was in Texas, I didn't tell them when we were going to do it because they wouldn't show up. But when I got up north, they showed up. We had a banquet, we had a breakfast. It was a thing. And the things that people always say, you know, and this is, I read an article or whatever, is, well, it's just boring.
Fact.
What do you really get out of it? So I know what I think they got out of it. I always called it a mentally challenging physical activity.
God, we're scary alike.
Yeah, it's a little scary. But you still do 100, 100s?
Yes. I do it. It's either normally on our training trip where we've gone to Island Murata, St. Pete, and if things work out right, we're on the training trip over New Year's Eve. So 6 a.m. on New Year's morning, the main set is 100 100s plus a warm up and a preset. But the main set's 100 100s, and normally it's an old school 12 to 13,000 yard, and it's just making them mentally tough. Now it's not. I don't do 100 100s on the 115. It might be 2100s on the 2100s. I am on the 120, 3100s on this, but it's 100 100s, and it always ends with the last 15 going 10 if it's long course, 10 with fins on the 110, and the last 5 sprint ABO, QBF, which is quadruple butt fast, on the 105. And they just have to get up and learn how to sprint when you're in your uncomfortable zone and you feel like crap, because everybody can swim fast when it's 75 and sunny. Yep.
Anybody else have a question? Okay, go ahead.
Mark, I don't know if you remember that I applied for the new tour job. We had a nice lunch. And one of the things I got out of your program and never told you was when you were telling me about your captains and your team running the swim meets, and I was totally amazed. So I took that back. I just want to say that sometimes you just get something from someone that you never expected to get something from. And after hearing what he was doing with his captains, I go, dang, that's got to be, I'm doing a lot of this. And like, I came back that next year, welcome to your new reality of what you're going to be as a captain. And what your responsibilities are. And I really appreciate that. And my captains really appreciate it. And actually became more of a motivator to be a captain. And it really got the people that were running for captain, they had to think about 3 times if they wanted that nasty job, because they had leadership with that. So I really appreciate that.
I got one more thing just real quick. So I'm a big fan of CASE. You guys know what CASE stands for?
No.
Oh, you're some copy and steal everything. But my handbook, thank you to Dave Robinson, is the Nutrier Swimming Handbook, paraphrasing in my language, but so
I didn't even use Dave Robertson.
I just found it, I'm like, okay, this sounds good. Moms are going to love this. And that was one of the first things I learned at St. Thomas Academy is our headmaster sat me down and goes, you got one job, John. Make sure you make all the moms happy, because then your life is easy.
That's true.
Anybody else have any questions? Arvo's mom?
You got any more questions for us?
Oh,
All right, I'm gonna throw one out there.
Yeah.
I'm new to the game, right? There's a lot of experience out there, there's lots of wisdom, all these coaches, you guys all share your information with people. How do you filter out the BS?
Yeah.
True to yourself.
Yeah, it really is about knowing yourself and your program, because some of it isn't BS, but it's just not going to work for you, or it's just not going to work for your kids. You know, I love listening to Eddie Reese talk about, you know, training at Texas or Bob Bowman or whatever. That's not, I don't even write stuff down because I'm like, we're not doing that. Like, I got kids that can't put their faces in the water at the beginning of season. We're not doing those sets. Even my good kids aren't like that. So, you know, I would consider that stuff for my program to be BS, but it's clearly not. It's working for somebody. So I think a lot of it is just trial and error and experimenting, and, you know, try it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, hey, you learned something about yourself, your team, your kids. And then you kind of move on. But I think the big thing is to not get tied down into any one like thing. Like, we are USRPT or we are fully aerobic or whatever it is. I think it's important to stay flexible, because the thing that I have found about swimming and coaching swimming is that it is different for everyone. Not just like for the coaches, but for the kids. Like, what I tell my one breaststroker who's super flat is going to be very different from my one who is more of a wave breaststroker, because they're built different, they work different. I'm not going to try to take that flat breaststroker and make him a wave breaststroker. It just, physiologically, it probably isn't going to work. Yeah, so it's tough to filter it out, and knowing who to trust online is probably the biggest thing. I think there's a lot of people out there that get very heavy into the science, and I think that's great. I don't really follow that so much. I kind of look at it a little bit just to make sure I know what's going on, but there's no one prescription. Like, if somebody says to you, every backstroker has to enter with their hand at 48.2 degrees, right? That you shouldn't be listening to that person. That's what I think. Anyway.
I'll just piggyback on that. It's trial and error, right? Eve said she went to a conference, wrote that stuff down, tried it for a week, didn't work. I took over a boys program, and I had gone to a seminar where the guy said, we do One Shot Wednesday, where they have a contest that's not swimming related for the whole team can participate in. So like every Wednesday we do something different. First day we did throw the goggles onto the backstroke flags, right? Everybody can participate. And we had 14 weeks of this every Wednesday. I was like, I thought it was kind of lame, but the kids got into it. Next year, first Wednesday came by, the kids are like, where's One Shot Wednesday? We got to do that stuff again. So obviously it was something that worked for me, but it may not work for them, right? So I think a lot of it is you go to these things, you got to take the notes, and then you got to filter it to fit what you're doing. We've never done 100 100s. mostly because we rent the pool and only have 2 hours, and there's no way we're getting it done in 2 hours, right? But we can modify it and do 150s, and we'll do 30 from the blocks, we'll do 30 breaststroke, we'll do 20 fly. You can modify it to make it work for you and try to get the same outcome, and then measure it and see if it worked for you, because that's really the most important part, because if it measured and it worked, then you're going to want to do it again. But if it didn't work, just put it in the pile and wait 5 or 6 years, bring it back out when you got a completely different team, and it might work again for the second group of kids.
Okay, you may have to think for a moment on this one. What comment or feedback have you gotten from alumni that most surprised you? I got surprised big time this last week from one of my former swimmers. And it just hit me that I guess I had an influence that I didn't know I had. But what comment or feedback have you gotten from your alumni that has most surprised you? Or caught you off base?
Well, I think one of mine was one of my swimmers that I had when I was coaching Plano Senior High School, and they won state. I didn't think this girl liked me at all, and I dealt with her parents. I dealt with her. Her senior year, it was really tough, and we left. We were cordial to each other, and I don't think I was her most successful coach, but I certainly thought I was trying to give her as much as I could possibly do. And then about a year ago, I saw her with her kids on deck, and all I got was, "Hey, you got to meet my daughter." And then she just tore into, "This guy is the best coach ever." It's like, what? And like hugging me, and it's like, how did that ever happen? And I think it's perspective years later, and it made me feel good. And it's like, well, I guess maybe I did make a bigger impact. And so those are the things that, man, it will keep you going. So that's it.
Tim, you got one?
Nope.
Oh, come on, Tim.
Tim, a man of few words. Somebody got one?
I wouldn't say I have one, but we do at the end of the season something we call our Kumbaya cry session. After the state meet, we go in, and I'm always amazed at these kids who are JV swimmers, and when they start talking about what the program means and what I helped them with that I never realized. Or it's the kids who come back that weren't your studs, weren't your main varsity swimmers, that were, as we would call them, lanes 4 and 5 in our 5-lane pool. And they come back and they hug you and just talk. I mean, you just don't realize it. And going back to the question earlier, how to weed out the BS, I think Eve said it great and Tree said it yesterday. Find out what you believe in, dig your heels in, and don't flip and move from what you believe in. Now you got to take the BS and get through it, but you got to find out who you are, and then as a coach or as a teacher, as a businessman, and you have to stay true to that.
What was the question?
Alumni that come back and maybe surprised you.
So, I don't know, I guess it did surprise me. So I had a young man my second year at Ottawa that I had to kick off the team after New Year's because he was in the pool bragging to his friends about how he was still hungover from his New Year's Eve party 2 days later. And he already was like on the edge because of attendance issues, and drugs is a big no on my program, obviously. So I pulled him aside and I said, "Look, I love you, but you are not doing what you have to do to stay on this team, and I have to put you off." And now you have to understand, there were like 6 kids on the team at the time. He was my fastest sprinter. And he was like a 32:50 free, but he was like the man on the team. And I put him off the team, and I felt really bad about it, but also I was like, I can't deal with this right now. You're gonna have to go. So probably 4 months later, he stopped by and he said, "Coach, I wanted to let you know that I haven't done any weed and I haven't drank since you kicked me off the team. and I joined track, and I'm doing really well on the track team. And I was like, that's great, dude. I'm so proud of you. And then probably a couple years ago, he showed up on the pool deck. He's got like 4 kids. His kids are going to Ottawa. They're basketball and track kids, so I haven't gotten to see him yet. But yeah, he turned out great. And that probably was, I don't know, the most surprising thing for me was that he took it seriously, because I didn't think he was taking swimming very seriously. He was just sort of there because it was a thing to do. And so the fact that me kicking him off the team was kind of a wake-up call was really surprising to me.
Any other questions? Oh, last.
Is a diving coach involved here?
Okay.
What did you do as a diving coach that one of my biggest, when I was coaching, and Tim was my diving coach, I wanted to make it a team.
Yeah.
I don't want the divers over here and the swimmers over here. I want to make it a team. What did you do to help that come along? That the divers felt part of the team, and that the swimmers felt, yeah, the divers are part of the team.
That's good. To be honest, I can't remember, but Mike has always been, that grew on me too, has been a one-team approach. He's, like I said yesterday, he's the best head swim coach for a diving coach ever. But we would always have a diver relay, and I hated that because we don't use the same muscles as the swimmers do. So I did give in, but it had to be after the diving was over. So they could never swim a 50, or like they can't swim the 50. Had to be like a 200 free relay or something like that. That was part of it. When my son was a captain, he was adamant about having the divers at the end of the pool always rooting on the swimmers, and that was mandatory. But it wasn't really mandatory. I mean, when they saw him down there, he went down there. But I really do believe, even though it's swimming and diving, I really believe that it has to be a one team effort, because otherwise swimming one day will lose diving, or vice versa. And I can't see that happening in an efficient way, because how are we going to share pool time, things like that. But it was one of the things that I learned from Bob White, and then Mike just completely caramelized in my behaviors, that it's a one team thing. That's about it.
Actually, I have the best diving coach. I'm sure you're great. But, so my diving coach, and we do the one team thing as well, right? It's the swimming and diving team. And we do all of our warm-ups, dynamic stretching, all of that happens together. And then the divers get on the board. Fortunately, we're able to do divers at the same time as swim. We have a diving well in our L-shaped pool. But my diving coach knows all of the swimmers' names, makes an effort to get to know the 27 other kids that aren't on her board, knows their names, knows kind of their times, what they're going for, what their goals are. I mean, she is just as much a coach of the swimmers as myself and my swim assistant. And she goes in, because the divers for us, a lot of time invitationals, they dive first. So they go in really early, and I try to make sure that my team is at the pool when diving starts. So if that means that we're going to be sitting there for an hour and a half, 2 hours before the warm-up happens, that's what we do, because we're a team and our divers are diving, so we're going to be there. We also stay we had finals one year, prelims one year was after swimming prelims. My whole team stayed. They were the only team to do so. Everybody else in the conference, their kids were out. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of important, because if you have divers, if you have good divers, and you've always had good divers, you might not appreciate it. But I had a couple of years where we didn't have any divers, and gosh, those points make a big difference. And now I've got 3 divers that can 1, 2, 3, or we're going against a team that don't have any divers. Man, my divers carried us this year, seriously. So I try to make sure that they get the same credit as the swimmers, because even though it's only one event, that's still an event that you can score a lot of points in.
I kind of agree with all that. I've always been the diving coach, so I know what they're doing, and we talk about it and communicate. The divers are going to go do this. Let's make sure we're here or supporting. You're not going off and talking to your friends while the diving's going on after the 50 free, and your guys are engaged, and they're always cheering for. Even if they wipe out, and you don't really cheer for a wipeout, but I've actually been very fortunate to have some really great divers at the state meet as well. So I think it's just having that conversation with them all.
We lost diving in 2004. But for 10 years, we found pools, found diving coaches, and kids would have to drive 15 miles for diving practice. But they always wanted to, because the way I think a little bit of our school is, the term is brotherhood, they wanted to be part of it. So they always did the 2 free relay, they do the 4 free relay. I even had a couple psychos that wanted some of the 500 free. And I put them in the JV because I wanted a nice break for my backstrokers. So it worked out great. Now the last 5 years, we had no one at school that was even interested. Tried snowboarders, everyone. And basically they didn't want to drive. They lived on the east side of town of Twin Cities and didn't want to drive 25, 30 miles to where our diving coach would be, because he was coaching 8 different teams at one location on the west side. So we haven't had diving for the last 5 years, but we will next year in our new pool. So if anyone has a connection to a diving coach, let me know.
So we on the boys' side, it's a little bit easier than on the girls' side. So 3 divers, 6 dives, 18 dives during a dual meet. So I made the divers and swimmers have a different cheer after every single dive, right? So they would do the dive, go into the water, surface, and then my boys would do a cheer. So it ranged all the way from absolute silence was one time. One would just be one clap and move on. One time they'd lift up a chair. One time they do the bowling thing and the guys fall down. Had an official come over and tell us that was not very sporting-like. I'm like, but it's our own team. And that's how we did it. We do it is we try to keep the swimmers actively engaged. On the girls' side, I made them do a relay this year. It was my first year with the team. Well, 3 of them could swim and 1 of them couldn't swim. But the 3 that could swim were faster than the JV kids. So the JV relay, the B diver relay, beat the JVA relay. And I'm like, they never practice. They're stretching all the time. So anyways, that's a great session. I thank everybody for participating. Thank you to the panel. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Last chance for books.
If you want a swim cap, make sure you grab a swim cap on the way out.
Well, I got your email, so I just need a note somewhere to remember to do that. Or he can email me to do that.
Just go back here.
That does, yes.
Uh-oh. See that slow JV diver?
Yes.
That's
well,
a
that's a
strategy.
That's a timeout. I was just saying we do the same thing with our diving chairs, like
Yes.
after every dive, but it's